Welcome everybody. So thankful y'all are here with us on Youth Night Online. It's good to be back with you guys after a week off for Mother's Day. I hope it was a great week for you. As a matter of fact, this is a great time for all of you students because you're coming in for a landing. Some of you are already done with school, way to go. And the rest of you, I guess it's this week, you're finishing up. So you guys finish up strong. You can do this, you're almost there. We're gonna have a great time tonight together. I'm so grateful that we get to hear from different voices who are helping us understand getting to know Jesus as Mark told about him in the Gospel according to Mark. And so tonight, so grateful for Kristen Milligan sharing with us about a pretty obscure story from just an isolated event in the life of Jesus that explains so much about how he saw people. And it's amazing. You're going to be blessed by hearing this tonight. And I encourage you to go ahead and get your Bible ready. Mark chapter 10. Now we're fast forwarding from where we were a couple of weeks ago. And so you feel free to read Mark on your own. Hope you will. This is going to be at the end of chapter 10 about a blind man Jesus encounters and helps him see in a way with his eyes. But we all need to see, don't we? We want to see Jesus for who he is. We want to see the world the way he sees the world. And we don't do that. We cannot do that without Jesus opening our eyes. And this first song we're going to sing in our song set is perfectly fitted for what we're going to talk about tonight. Broken vessels. You ever feel broken? I know I have multiple times over the last few weeks and certainly over the course of my life. And it's mind-blowing that Jesus would use us despite our brokenness. He makes us what he wants us to be a vessel in this world. So let's come to him and tell him what we want is to be able to see, and he'll give that to us. I'm so grateful that we get to sing together, so I encourage you to join in worship now.
All these pieces broken and scattered, and mercy gathered, mended and whole. Empty-handed, but not forsaken. I've been set free. I've been set free. Oh, amazing grace. How sweet the sound that saves a wretch like me. Oh, I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see now. I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. You take our failures, you take our weakness, you set your treasure in jars of clay. So take this heart, Lord, I'll be a vessel, the world to see your life in me. Oh, amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saves a wretch like me. Oh, I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see now. I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken tonight. I count on one thing, the same God who never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the way. The same God who's never late is working all things out, working all things out. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Yes, I will. I count on one thing, the same God who never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the way. The same God who's never late is working all things out, working all things out. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Yes, I will for all my days. Yes, I will.
Hey guys, I miss y'all so much. I wish we could be together tonight, but I am really excited to bring this story to you. We're gonna talk about Mark chapter 10 verses 46 through 52. But before we start that, I have a story. It just illustrates so perfectly how Jesus sees people around him, and it's about my niece, Lila Grace. I am always just so fascinated by the way kids see the world, but they're not stopped by all of the things that we would think about, the anxieties and the embarrassments, and they just go for it, and it's so incredible. So my niece, Lila Grace, is sitting in church one Sunday, and her father is finishing up worship, and we all know the last song, right? It's time for the kids to go to children's class. So my sister leans over and tells my nieces, both of them, to head on back, and they start off, but Lila Grace doesn't make it out of the auditorium because sitting in the back row is a lady, a visitor who she'd never seen before, and she's not gonna miss out, right, on a friendly introduction, an opportunity to go meet someone new. So she stops and she scoots around her, and she sits down beside this little lady, and she introduces herself, and then she takes her hand and she sits with this woman for the entirety of the Sunday sermon and holds her hand. And it just is so incredible to me that that's what that lady needed. That woman, she was a visitor. She was an elderly lady who just happened on a whim to stop by that church that Sunday morning. And in walks Lila Grace to hold her hand. She's not alone. It's so incredible. And when I think about Jesus, I think like this practice what you preach mentality. That's really what he's trying to get across to his disciples. So twice in our reading this week, Jesus pulls a child in and he says, y'all aren't getting it. but this, look at who is. And that paraphrase is totally mine. You're not gonna find that in the KJV or the NIV. But just stop and think for a minute. Why do you want to get close to Jesus? In Mark 10:45, Jesus is going to give us a better glimpse at what following him is supposed to look like. But he's trying to turn all of our selfish, our self-absorbed human behavior into more of an other-centered way of living. And he reminds his disciples of servanthood and how minimizing yourself is how you minister effectively to others. It's the Lila Graces, right, of the world that give us this example of what Jesus did and what we are called to do, how following Jesus should look to the world. It's not about ambition. It's not about earthly importance. Service is what defines you. So certain stories we read in the Bible, we've read them 100 times before, and they can hit us in a new way. And I love that. I love that every time we open our Bibles, we have the opportunity to glean something new. That's what I pray for tonight. I pray that as we work through these 8 verses in Mark, that we all take something specific to our own spiritual walks. Mark is writing this gospel account primarily for Roman Christians, for the Gentiles. The Jews had been waiting for a Messiah for centuries, for God's chosen one to come and set them free from what they thought was political oppression. But in Mark 8:31 through the end of chapter 10, Jesus offers his disciples the chance to see his mission for what it really is. Not the overthrow of Rome, not the overthrow of political oppression, but something so much bigger, the overthrow of the kingdom of darkness. So tonight I want you to ask yourself this question: who am I in this story? Where do I see myself in this encounter with Jesus? So Mark 10:46, Jesus is leaving Jericho with a great crowd. And Jesus, in just Mark 10:33, he's told his disciples for the 3rd time that he's headed to Jerusalem, that they're all on this road. And we know that Jesus and his disciples, they're headed to Jerusalem for Passover, along with a lot of other people. This road from Jericho to Jerusalem had been traveled for thousands of years. It's a road that travelers had been using for centuries to get to Passover. And this verse, as it continues, we see Bartimaeus, a blind beggar, the son of Timaeus, that he's sitting by the roadside. To first century the Jewish community, an illness, a disability, it would have been a sign that your family had sinned. And actually in John, Jesus is healing a blind man, and the disciples ask, well, who sinned, him or his parents? So you are an outcast. You're pushed outside of the community. And Jesus is showing the disciples and the readers of Mark, he's showing us that your circumstances do not place you outside of the reach of God. Bartimaeus, his name, actually the bar part means son. So this man doesn't even have a name. He's known as the son of Timaeus. This scene that is being set for us in that first verse, it is so frenetic. When I think about it, I picture all of the crowds leaving like a Braves game, right? Leaving a basketball game if you love Kentucky. The crowds are everywhere and everybody's headed in one direction to this exit. So much noise is going on. And this road from Jericho to Jerusalem, it's about 17 to 18 miles. And just to give you some perspective, that's like if we all decided to set off from the church and walk up to the outlet malls. Not gonna happen, way too long. So they're all really excited. And as they're walking, look, they all know who Jesus is. He's a widely known rabbi, right? They're all caught up in this anticipation. So Bartimaeus is sitting on the side of the road with his cloak in his lap. And the way this works is the cloak would be put in his lap, making a bowl, so that as people walk by, they're gonna throw change. And this cloak is gonna catch all of the money that he would get for the day. He's marginalized, an outcast in society, no hope, no name, and treated as a nuisance, not a person. And so as the crowd is walking by, Bartimaeus recognizes something's going on here, right? This isn't the usual day. And so he asks, what's going on? A bystander is going to tell him that, hey, this is Jesus of Nazareth. But what Bartimaeus does is so incredible, because listen to what he says. Bartimaeus says, Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. Bartimaeus isn't calling Jesus, hey, that really awesome rabbi that's good at speaking from Nazareth. That's not what he's calling him. He is referring to Jesus as a messianic prophecy out of Isaiah. How does he know that? That's incredible to me. Mark says that the crowd's going to rebuke him. Rebuke is not a word that we use. When I get in trouble or when I'm getting onto my children, I'm like, I rebuke you. That's not a normal word. So the connotation there is a harsh, stern criticism. There's an implication of a threat. It's not a, shh, everybody be quiet. That's not what a rebuke is. And so Bartimaeus is being threatened, right? You need to stop talking. Don't you raise your voice. Do you know who this is? He can't be bothered with you. And yet, Bartimaeus is not going to let this great crowd stop him from gaining the attention of Jesus. Mark tells us that when they rebuke him, he cries out even louder, Son of David, have mercy on me. And Jesus stops in the middle of the crowd and stands still, and he says 2 words, call him. Call him. You and the crowd that shushed him, you go call him to me. You who spoke without compassion, no, you opened your mouths in mercy. You who rebuked him and threatened him, you go humble yourself and undo what you've done. 2 words, call him. And with those words, Jesus offers Bartimaeus life, and he restores his dignity. When you begin to read Mark, it does not take you long to see that Jesus' day is constantly interrupted. From the outside, that's what it really looks like. Like he's always starting out, and then immediately something else happens. But that doesn't get him sidetracked. These aren't interruptions to Jesus. But they don't throw him off like they would me or you. You get to see how many times God has sovereignly placed someone to run smack into his son. It's a divine appointment. So no matter what else is going on, Jesus is still Jesus. His grace and mercy and power call us to something that we don't even know is in us. Reading in verse 49, the crowd is going to go to Bartimaeus and they say, take heart, get up. He is calling you. And Bartimaeus goes from sitting on the side of the road to leaping up and running to Jesus. He goes from sitting to jumping, throwing aside his cloak. You see, nothing is going to keep Bartimaeus from his Messiah. He runs, leaving everything behind. And yeah, it does say that he left his cloak, but his cloak, that was all he had. That not only provided, it was his security, it was his shelter. It also kept his money. That was everything to him. And he left it. Jesus is going to ask him a question. It's a beautiful question. What do you want me to do for you? Now, this is going to be the second time, just in chapter 10, that Jesus asked this question. The first time is found a few verses earlier in 36, because the Jewish community and his disciples had assumed that the Messiah was going to bring political overthrow of Rome. So James and John, they're just hoping to be second and third to Jesus when they get to Jerusalem. They assume that they're all headed to install Jesus as king of Jerusalem. But what they're doing is they're placing earthly expectations over a heavenly calling that is so much bigger. So here in verse 51, we see a simple, desperate cry for mercy of the Messiah. And Jesus tells Bartimaeus that his faith is restored, or his faith is what restores his sight. Jesus said, "Go your way. Your faith has made you well." And immediately he recovered his sight and followed Jesus on the way. Bartimaeus went from sitting on the side of the road to following Jesus in the way. There's no other way to go. He's worth the risk. He's worth engaging. He's worth crying out to, and he's worth following. The King James Version of Mark 10:52 says that Bartimaeus received his sight and followed Jesus in the way. Now, this reference to the way sent a lightning storm off in my brain. Like, I could not contain myself, because in Acts, we are told the disciples and followers of Jesus are referred to as the way. And just in Acts 9, Saul actually goes to get a letter from the synagogues in Damascus, because he's looking for anyone that belongs to the way. The way. It's like Mark is implying that not only did Bartimaeus follow Jesus up to Jerusalem, but followed him in the way, in Jesus's mission. Just Mark mentioning his name, scholars say, indicates that he would have been known to the Roman Christians. Oh my goodness, like I just can't contain it. Mark is the only gospel that gives a name to the blind man here on the road from Jericho to Jerusalem. But he's not the only gospel that includes this miracle. My word, like I just am so in awe of the word of God that this story I've skimmed over too many times, right? That I would ever care to admit is this remarkable. In John 6:67 and 68, a lot of Jesus's followers have walked away from him. So Jesus takes his 12 disciples to him, and he asks them, "Are you going to leave me too?" And Peter looks at Jesus and says, "Where would we go? You have the words of eternal life." So where do you find yourself in this story? Because there's something to be said about everyone on the road, all heading in the same direction with Jesus to Jerusalem. But Bartimaeus, to him, this road from Jericho to Jerusalem means infinitely more when you follow Jesus. They're on their way to Passover with the Passover lamb, and the only one realizing it in this moment is a blind man who doesn't even have a name. How ironic, and yet how simple. The son of Timaeus wasn't about to let the Son of God, the Passover lamb, the Messiah, walk right past him. It just goes to illustrate that we can be in the right crowd, right, doing the right thing, and still miss the truth. So how would you answer that question that Jesus asked James and John and Bartimaeus? What would you have me do for you? Bartimaeus is a picture of what the disciples needed to see. Jesus was calling them to serve others like he had come to do, to minister, or to minimize ourselves, to minister effectively to others. What is keeping you from Jesus? What is standing in your way, blinding you from seeing what God has called you to do? I don't want you to miss it. I don't want to miss it. Sometimes we can get so caught up, right, and distracted with even good stuff that we miss what's right in front of us. The thing you're distracted with is never as important as the thing you are distracted from. We are called to look outward and to look upward to Jesus Christ. When we stop looking at ourselves and look to Jesus and see who he is, then we will see his power demonstrated in our lives. In January, I ran across this verse that I just cannot get it out of my mind. It's 2 Corinthians 4, verse 6. And the end of the verse says that the light of the knowledge of the glory of God is seen in the face of Christ. It's such a beautiful picture And I just can't help but think that the first thing Bartimaeus sees once his sight is restored was the glory of God in the face of Christ. That's so incredible. And so the song that we just sang, Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see it now. I can see the love in your eyes. I don't think I'll ever get over that. What Bartimaeus saw on the road that day affected the rest of his life, changed the entire trajectory of his life. And because of that, Mark is telling us right here to his Roman readers, Bartimaeus, you know Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, the guy that can see now because of what Jesus did, but not only see physically, but spiritually see the Messiah.
Jesus is amazing. I'm so grateful for Kristen bringing this story to us tonight so we could understand that Jesus is calling us. Jesus called this man Bartimaeus, and he's calling us. And so I hope that you're choosing to follow him. Really, there's no other way to see than to come to Jesus and say, I want to see. I mean, we need help. And Jesus is the one who takes our broken vessels and makes something out of them. And so I hope that in your small group time, you'll have some great conversations about what's distracting you, what's making it difficult for you to see Jesus right now. I also want to encourage you to join us for a little conversation we're going to have on Zoom this week to go a little deeper into, the many wonderful things we can learn about Jesus in this section of Mark. And so follow our social media so you can know any of that upcoming information. You can see that at the end of this video. I hope you have a fantastic week and a great time in your small group. God bless.